Radio 161, great to make the hook up there, Matt. Yeah, Matt, J. Juliet Alpha Yankee was my name for your further information.
Hi, this is CBRadioMagazine.com, and today we're going to be looking at a brand new radio. This is the Alpha 10 Max AM-1000 10-meter amateur transceiver. This is an export radio. This is new on the market, just arrived around Christmas time. You should start seeing them in shops soon. We're going to show you what this radio is all about. It's very, very feature rich. So let's open the box and we'll have a look and see what's inside. The radio comes with fairly standard items: a mounting bracket, mounting hardware, power cord, which is a standard 3-pin power cord, and a microphone. The microphone has up-down ability and also an automatic squelch button on it. For a short walk around of the radio, we'll look at the face first. The face of the radio is fairly standard looking at first glance. Looks similar to other radios, maybe like a Galaxy 88, some of the older Galaxy Plutos, or even like an Omega Force. It does have the standard control knobs along the bottom, and then the secondary buttons up above. This radio does have an LCD display, and it also has a channel selector and display on the right-hand side. Although it looks fairly standard, this radio has a ton of features that you won't find on other radios. It's very programmable, which means you can alter a lot of the functions in it. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. So let's have a look around the rest of the radio. This radio does use a 4-pin microphone connector. The included microphone does have buttons on it, and because of that, the pin number 4 on this microphone connector is hot, meaning it does have voltage. You cannot connect a standard 4-pin microphone to this radio without first disconnecting the 4th pin from the microphone. Otherwise, you will damage the radio. Once again, if you do want to use a standard 4-pin Galaxy Cobra Uniden type microphone, you do first have to make a modification to pin 4 to make sure it won't connect, otherwise you will damage the radio. At the back of the radio there is a heat sink. This helps dissipate heat from the dual finals in this radio. There's an antenna jack. And over below that on the right hand side is your power connector, which is a standard 3-pin Cobra Uniden type power connector. It does have 2 jacks above that. One is a CW key jack and one is an external speaker jack. Alright, I know everyone's dying to see this radio in action, so let's power it up. And the first thing you'll see is the LCD display in the center of the radio. The 7-digit frequency display is not an active frequency counter. It's merely a display, so much like the 2950DX, it will show you where the radio is programmed to transmit on, but if there is a problem, of course, it won't show the actual frequency it's transmitting on. Since it is a microprocessor controlled radio, though, it should be pretty much where you transmit is what you see, what you get. The display does have a function here. It's going to show your AM, FM, upper sideband, lower sideband modes, and PA and CW as well. There's an SRF meter here showing your signal strength, and other functions will appear across the top as you engage them. Alright, now that we've powered up the radio, let's go through some of the basic features. There's some additional features in the function set that we're not going to get into initially, but I'll go through everything that is showing on the radio just to give you a first glance here. Starting on the left hand side, we've got a on-off volume squelch control. The inside knob here is your volume. It's also going to turn the radio on and off. Squelch is the outside control. Next is your echo control. The outside knob is going to be the amount of delay. The inside knob is the amount of gain or amount of echo. We have a RF rain button. Somebody in China got their screen printing wrong there, and obviously that's supposed to be your RF gain knob. So your RF gain is your inside knob here. Your RF power is your outside knob, and that's to control the amount of output on the radio for setting your dead key, etc. There's a band selector, so you can go through the different banks of channels. Beyond that, there's a mode selector, so you can select PA, CW, AM, FM, upper sideband or lower sideband. There's a clarifier control. There's also a push function for the clarifier control. If you push it in, you can control different functions, and we'll discuss that as well. On the outside, there's a channel selector or frequency selector. You'll see a channel display. In export mode, this is mainly set up, for the CBers 11 meters. You can see which channel you're on. It'll correspond to the frequency. When the radio is set up in 10-meter mode, obviously this isn't really going to be as useful because it's not really corresponding to anything. Let's have a look at the buttons and discuss what they do on the left side of the radio. Okay, let's discuss the buttons on the left-hand side of the radio. There's 8 buttons. They are dual control buttons, meaning that there's 2 functions for each button. To access the lower labeled function, you have to hit the function key first, which is on the left-hand side of the radio here. So to start off, let's just go across the top of all the labels and discuss what each button does for that set of functions. So first of all, we've got RB, which stands for Roger Beep. If you press that button in or out, it turns the Roger Beep on or off. The next one's going to be Noise Blank ANL. That's your automatic noise limiter. It turns that on or off. The next one after that is DW, which stands for Dual Watch, so you can watch 2 frequencies at switching back and forth. There's a scan feature on the radio. Once you press that, it will start scanning through the channels. If it hits a signal, you have the squelch up obviously for that. When it hits a signal that breaks the squelch, it will stay there until the signal disappears. And you also can change that in some of the other functions, and we'll talk about that. There's a 10 kilohertz option, SWR, you can check your SWR, and an EMG button, which stands for emergency frequency. If you press that, it'll take you to channel 9 in the expanded export mode. Let's talk about the secondary features. There is a BP button here, so if you press function and then the BP button, it will enable a beep, and that is actually standard when you first get the radio. It's one of the first things you're going to want to turn off. The beep button is enabled, and anytime you do anything with the radio, it makes a very loud beep, and I think everyone's probably going to function on this radio with that off, so something you'll want to probably turn off right away. Next over, there's a lock function. If you press the function and then that lock button, it means it's going to lock you out of the radio. So if you try and change the channel, you'll see nothing happens. It just tells me it's locked and it stays on frequency. So that's to make sure you don't bump something or your kids play with the radio. They're not going to knock you off frequency. And we're going to disable that. The next one's an LCD off function. So if you are someone that's just running the channels, you're in a truck, you don't want to look at the frequency, press the function LCD off, and LCD goes off. You're just running on the channel display on the right hand side of the radio. And we can turn that back on. The SC list button, that's an option so you can opt out of certain frequencies when you're scanning. If there's certain frequencies you want to skip, you select them using that function, and then when you go to scan, it'll skip over them. Something that we haven't really seen on a whole lot of other radios. Recently, the most recent one that comes to mind was an old AR3500 I did that had that option. The next function is a high cut. Cuts out the high-end hiss on your receive. The next one over here is a TOT button, and that's a timeout for transmit. You can set it up so that if you talk longer than a certain amount of time, the radio will time out your transmission and stop you from transmitting until you unkey and key again. And people do set that up on occasion, but I think most CBers often keep it keyed longer than they really should anyway, so they'll probably ignore that feature. There's a SRF option here. You can do function SR off, and it removes the meter from the radio so it doesn't display that. So those are the basic functions for the radio. We can go into the function options now, and that's a whole nother set that we can discuss. There's quite a lot there to discuss, and you can really customize the radio to your needs. So let's jump into that. Okay, there are options on this radio that you can access using a function menu. To access the function menu, you hold down the function key for 2 seconds. It gets you into the menu, and to scroll through the different options, you can just press the function key. Most of these aren't going to make any sense initially, so we're going to go through and describe what each one does. Like I said, there's a lot of customization you can do for this radio, so each person can really change stuff the way they want it. If you don't press anything for a couple seconds, it will time out and go back out to your main frequency display. Alright, the first function we'll discuss in the function menu is the step function. We'll hold down the function button to go in, and it gives us the step function, so we can go through and select the steps for your clarifier control. This allows you to set different tuning steps when you adjust the clarifier knob. So for example, we'll start off, we can do a 10 hertz option. So it's going to default back to the main menu, and as we turn the clarifier, you'll see that it's turning and adjusting the radio in 10 hertz steps. We can go back into the function menu and say we want to adjust in 100 hertz steps. Now when it defaults back out, you'll see we're adjusting in 100 hertz steps. And once again, we can go back in, go into a 1 kilohertz step, and now you can see we're adjusting it in kilohertz. And of course, the last option is you can adjust in 10 kilohertz steps, and we'll show you that. And it only allows you to go just up and down slightly when you're using that function. Now, the cool thing about this is if we're going in the 10 hertz steps with the clarifier doesn't have a stop on it, meaning it's continuously adjusting. So we can basically just twist the clarifier all the way around. And I mean, theoretically, you could tune through the entire band like this. So it does give you a lot of adjustment on where the radio is going to transmit. The next option in the function menu is the clarifier control. RT allows you to control both the transmit and the receive of the clarifier when we're in this mode. So you can set it to RT, and then as you turn the clarifier, it adjusts transmit and receive. If you have it in T mode, it adjusts just the transmit. So as you turn the clarifier, it only adjusts your transmit frequency. If you go to the FIN mode, that turns it into a receive-only clarifier. So FIN means it's just receive frequency only. RT means it controls both transmit and receive. And T controls just transmit. So you can do that option with your clarifier. The next option in the function menu is in reference to the clarifier as well. You'll see 3 different options. One is step, one is transmit, and one is coarse clarifier. Now this clarifier, when you push it, it does enable a different function, and that's what this controls. So we can either set it up for COA, and that means that when you press the clarifier, it turns it into both transmit and receive, or a coarse clarifier. If you have it in the step function, when you push the clarifier, you can control the steps for what you're doing on the radio, and I'll show you that one. So we're going to have it in the push step function, and right now it's in the 10 hertz mode. If we push the clarifier in, now we're in the 100 hertz mode. Push it in again, we've now gone to kilohertz mode. So that's kind of neat. You can adjust that in that mode. And of course the T option, when we're inside the function menu, turns the clarifier into transmit, change transmit only. So transmit, coarse clarifier option, transmit and receive, and the step function. And that's for when you push the clarifier in. The next option on the radio is an automatic squelch control. This radio does have the ability to have an automatic squelch control where it squelches it out based on what the static level is. It's something I think most people really won't use. A lot of guys like to manually set the squelch themselves, but you can adjust that on or off. Okay, we'll discuss the timeout, transmit timeout feature. When you're in the function menu, you can adjust the amount of time before it times out. And you can do it up to 600 seconds. So it's in seconds as it shows here. So you can do it up to 600 seconds. The transmit timeout feature is primarily used if you are someone who sits on your microphone by accident a lot or puts stuff down on it, where you might have the radio sitting on transmit for 20 minutes or something. And, you know, of course, that heats up your transistors. It can lead to finals blowing, things like that. So this option would be for those people that by accident get their key on their microphone pushed. So you can set that up for the amount of time that you want to have it on there. The next function on the radio in the function menu is in reference to the scanning. And it has 2 types, a SQ option or a TI option. And let me describe what those are. SQ, when selected, basically means that the radio will scan through. When it gets to a frequency that it hears that breaks the squelch, it'll stay on that frequency until that signal drops back down again and the squelch goes back in. On the TI option, when you have that, it'll scan through. If it hears a signal, it stops there for 5 seconds and will stay there for 5 seconds whether that signal continues or stops breaking the squelch. So just 2 different options for that. Okay, the next option in the function menu is the transmit SWR protection. You can turn this on or off. And basically what that does is if you key the radio and you have this on and you have a really high SWR, the radio will look at the SWR and see if it's too high, it'll stop and won't transmit. Basically, it's a 20-to-1 ratio. Once the SWR value is higher than that, it defaults and will stop the radio from transmitting. So it's an SWR protection built in. It'll read the SWR and say, hey, your SWR is too high, we need to stop transmitting, and the radio can do that automatically. Okay, so here's something you don't see every day. This is a power supply voltage protection option. You can turn this on or off. Basically, this option allows you to enable power supply voltage protection, meaning that if the voltage is too high or too low, it will stop the radio from transmitting once again. So if your voltage drops too low, it'll stop from transmitting. If your voltage goes too high, it'll stop from transmitting. And something just again to protect the radio and from running into problems with overvoltage or things like that. We're going to get into something now that you haven't seen on a radio probably before, and this is an option to change what happens on the display when you transmit. So first of all, TF. That means that when we transmit, the LCD display is going to show the frequency that we're transmitting on. Right now, it obviously hasn't changed, and it's just going to show us that that's the transmit frequency. Go back into the function menu, and we can set it up in this option to do SR, which is SWR value. Now, what this means is whenever you transmit on the radio, it'll show you what your SWR is. Right away, I don't really trust the SWR setting because I do know my SWR is a lot lower than 1.6 with my current setup. I do have a very high quality SWR meter, so I do know it's lower than that. So the radio probably may need to be adjusted for that function, but it's kind of neat that as you transmit, it will tell you what your SWR is. Continuing on with the same option, you can also have it show your battery voltage. So if you set it up to BAT, when you transmit, it shows how many volts are coming through the radio. So 14 volts DC. That's something you haven't seen on too many other radios before. And we'll show you the last function, which would be our timeout remaining. This means that if you have the timeout function set up for the transmit timeout, when you key the radio, in this case we have it turned off, so it's just going to show off, but it'll show how many seconds remaining you have before it automatically shuts off your transmission. So if you are talking, you have it set to 600 seconds and you talk for 550 seconds, it'll show that you have 50 seconds remaining. Okay, now we're going to get to one that people are really going to be interested in, I think. For all you guys that like running a Roger beep, you'll see it says RBF. This is your Roger beep frequency adjustment. You can adjust to a high or low tone. So you can do in between a 300 kilohertz up to a 3 kilohertz tone. So this allows you to adjust what people hear. So you can either have a real low beep or you can have a high beep, when you go through with your Roger beep. Now, right after that function in the menu, get back to it here. This is your time delay. You can adjust the default holding time on your Roger beep. You can do it from 500 milliseconds up to 1,000 milliseconds. So people are really going to like this function, especially the CBers. For the Roger beep, you can either have it be a short tone or you can have it be a long tone. So you can adjust both the pitch and the time. So something that people are going to be real interested in, I'm sure. Okay, so the next option after the Roger beep time is our CW side tone frequency. This is so you can adjust the frequency tone from anywhere between 300 hertz to 3 kilohertz. And obviously this is for ham radio operators if they want to adjust that. Since we're doing an initial overview of the radio, we will discuss real quick about how to convert it for export use. When you get the radio from the factory or your local shop, wherever you buy it, it's going to be set up for 10 meters. What you're going to need to do is, if you want to convert it for export use for additional frequencies or 11 meter use, it's very easy to do. A lot of people had asked about this and how to do it on this radio. All you would do is you'll hold down the function and scan buttons together while you power on the radio. It's going to make a beep. It'll show a different little menu option as you get in there, and then you just release those and you'll be converted for export use. And we'll let those go and it's going to beep. And as you can see, Now we're into the export frequencies. I'm going to turn off that beep function, that always will come on. And as you can see there, we've now jumped into the export mode, and it gets us into our 11 meter frequencies. Once again, this radio is not legal for 11 meters. It's an export radio, so if you do transmit on these frequencies, you're doing so illegally, but I'm sure that won't stop many people. Something about this radio that I do really like off the bat is the backlit display on the controls and the buttons and the channel changing knob and everything on there. The export radio market hasn't had a ton of radios that have backlit display on them. It's something we've seen on, Cobra 29 night watches and stuff like that, but the backlighting just doesn't happen as much as I'd like to see. For those of you who use your radios at night, you know how useful it is to actually be able to tell what you're grabbing at. So let me show you what the display looks like at night. It's nice, it's not too bright. We'll turn off the light there. Some of the radios have the bright blue LEDs. It's a little too extreme. So the lighting scheme, it's actually very similar to the Galaxy 979 radio with the Galaxy Starlight faceplate. So it looks a lot like that at night. The LCD shows up very well. Not overpowering in terms of brightness or anything, but very easy to see. So definitely something neat about this radio as well. Alright, we have taken the covers off the Alpha Max 10 AM-1000 export radio. This is what the inside of the radio looks like. It does utilize surface mount technology, so you will see some very small resistors on there. A lot of people won't like this in terms of working on the radios. It does make it much more difficult to work on the radios. But as far as the control pots, they are all labeled on the radio. The only thing is they're very, very tiny, so you just have to look for them. If you're looking at the inside of the radio, and this is towards the back of the radio, your power connector is over here on this side, and your finals will be over on the left side here. This is as you have the radio upside down with the speaker cover removed. The AM modulation control, it's going to be very small. It's variable and adjustable. It's going to be right here located on the board. You have to be very careful when adjusting these. They are easy to break off if you give them too much force, because they are small technology and they're mounted there. It's not a whole lot of solder and stuff mounting them on there. So be careful, but that is your AM modulation point. Once again, it's right here. The Alpha 10 Max does utilize dual finals, so it will have more output than a standard CB radio. The dual finals are the IRF 520 MOSFETs, so with the radio tuned up properly, you should see output in between 30 and 40 watts. One of the more interesting aspects of the Alpha 10 Max radio is that it is programmable from a computer. You plug a USB cable into the computer, and using the included software, you code the information to the radio. You connect the USB cord, shown here, to a point inside the radio, shown here. The cord and the software that's included for the programming doesn't come with the radio. It's something that does need to be purchased separately. We're going to show how to program this radio via the computer. Once we've connected the radio to the computer and pulled up our software, we now can begin doing the programming. What we can do is go into the program here, and there's an option. It drops down and you can do read from radio. It says, do you want to read the data from the radio? And we hit OK, and you'll see it imports all the information and frequencies as they're stored right now in the radio to the computer. Once they're on the computer, then we can go in and make changes. We can alter the frequencies on each band, so you can select the band that you want to work with here in the drop down. You can also set the emergency channel for each band. So let's say we go into band A, so now we can set, okay, emergency channel on this one will be this channel or frequency, which corresponds to the channel number along the side here. One of the interesting things is you can actually adjust the transmit and receive frequencies in here. So you could set it up for split frequency operation in this, and then when you go in, say you set yourself up on channel 10 in band D or band C, what you do is that channel, you could set it up to transmit on one frequency and receive on another. So you really could go to town on the options here and set it up that way. And you can adjust, the Roger beep, the noise blank, the echo, all these different things. You can enable them or disable them and how they function in those certain frequencies. So you can say, hey, if I'm operating in 10 meters, we don't want the echo or the Roger beep to be enabled. And then you can say in the CB band for those guys, you can have it operate. So Lots of different functions. You can remove stuff from the scanning feature, so you can remove certain frequencies from the scan, and you know, there's amazing things you can do with it. Basically, lots of different stuff. Once you're done, you then upload it back to the radio. It updates the microprocessor on the radio, and then you're done. And I won't show you how to do it step by step because there's quite a lot of information in here on how to do it, but it does come with a programming manual that's on the disc if you purchase this extra kit. And it's not necessary to operate this radio on extended frequencies, but it allows you to do the programming on this radio, which is one of the neat features. Okay, we're going to show you an example of what we're going to do right now. This radio does have the ability to go up to 30 megahertz. So right now, setting up, if you go through A through F, F is only taking us up to around 28.165, and that's just expanding the radio using the powering on method to give it the export function. We're going to go through and designate a couple of 10 meter frequencies in here, and then I'll even designate channel 3, for instance, or actually I'll go down a little bit further, and I'll designate one of the channels to actually go up to 30 megahertz. I'll upload the information to the radio and I'll power it back on to show you what it does. Okay, now I can give you an example of how the programming worked. We've changed a couple things in the programming function software. We've uploaded the data to the radio. So as you can see right now, we're on the D band, and after you do the conversion using just the power on off method with the radio, the D band is the CB band. And what we've done is I did my programming changes up in the F band. So the F band before started, you know, around 28,100 and didn't go all the way up to the frequencies that I wanted. So what I did was I went in, and you can see it stopped, channel 40 stopped at 28.300, so just touching into the 10 meter band for voice. I went up and programmed it into going up to 28.400 on channel 1. So as you can see here, I've programmed these frequencies in, and you'll see the big changes. What I also did was programmed it in to go all the way up to 30 megahertz just to show you. So as we're going through, it's in 28, and all of a sudden, bam, I programmed in on one of those lines in the software program to say, hey, go up to 30 megahertz. So totally programmable, and you can pick the channel, right? I picked this on channel 16. On the next one, I could say go on channel 17, go to 27.385. On channel 18, I could say go to 26.875. So you can program it in to go exactly where you want. This is something I think even the ham radio guys would be interested in if they're looking for a 10 meter radio where they can program in the exact frequencies that they want using this type of software. This is stuff that you kind of see when you get into ham radio gear. So very useful, very interesting. You can totally customize the banks of channels the way you wanted. You could set up a band of just all your favorite frequencies. You could set up a band for CB, a band for 10 meter, just whatever you want to do, a band for CW only, a band for voice. So this is just kind of an example of what this does, and pretty interesting that you can go through and make these changes using the software. Hope you enjoyed this overview of the Alpha 10 Max AM-1000 radio, a new radio on the market.